All the world believes a lie. So when I tell it the truth, it thinks I am telling a lie. Who said that? Phineas Parkes Quimby in 1847, America's greatest healer. He was a marvelous healer, and that is one of his favorite statements. He was really the greatest healer America's ever known. And what is it? What is that lie? Well, the great lie, of course, is that external things are causative. Now, the scientific thinker, the man who thinks, with any sense at all, will not give power to the phenomenalistic world. The phenomenalistic world is an effect, it's not a cause. The scientific thinker gives power to the creator, not the created thing. The infinite presence and power is within you. I am the Lord that healeth thee. So the miraculous healing power is within you. It's one power. Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God is one power, not two or three or 1,000, just one. Mathematically, scientifically, spiritually, there can be only one power. If there were two powers, one would cancel out the other. There'd be chaos everywhere. There'd be no order, symmetry, or proportion of the universe. There would be a clash of wills, so that would be absurd. There's only one power. So externals are not causative. There are people who think, as Quimby brought out, that the night air gives them a cold or pneumonia. The night air is oxygen and nitrogen, helium and some other gases. It's innocuous, it's harmless. The night air never said, I'll give you a chill or a cold or the sniffles or pneumonia. And there are people who believe if their feet get wet, I was taught that when I was a boy. Oh, you'll get a cold now, you'll get a very, very bad cold. You may get a pneumonia because your feet were wet. The water is made of H2O, and it's hydrogen and oxygen. It's harmless. The water can't give you a cold or pneumonia or a chill or the sniffles. If someone sneezes, oh, I'm going to catch a cold. Well, to sneeze is simply God's alarm system in you to bring about a balance. It brings a balance in your body. If you're in a warm room and you go out in the cold atmosphere, you may sneeze. Nature seeks a balance. Just like you are born with two fears. Fear of falling, fear of noise. Well, that's God's alarm system, yes, in you. And you're walking down the road and a car is coming along, it toots the horn, you step aside, you're free from your fear. So the law is, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the way you think and feel, so are you. And your thought and feeling create your destiny. Your heart is your subconscious mind. And whatever you impress in that subconscious mind comes forth as form, function, experience, and event. You're not subject to forces outside yourself. These are created things. You don't give power to men, women, and children, to the sun, the moon, and the stars. God created all these things. Stars are molecules moving in space. They're molecular, just like your body, as waves of light. And the planets are harmless. Therefore, you don't give power to external things. You're told there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's an absolute truth. Some people say, well, strawberries give me hives. Well, if that were true, everybody in the world who ate strawberries would get hives, but they don't. That person has made a law for himself. He has a bad relationship with strawberries. And when he says strawberries give me hives, that's a command to his subconscious mind. And of course, when he eats strawberries, then the subconscious sees the strawberries coming down and says the boss wants hives, so it proceeds to give you hives. These are laws you make for yourself. Or you might say, well, I can't eat mushrooms, I get acute indigestion. Well, that's a law you made for yourself. Millions of people eat mushrooms and they don't get indigestion. You see, if it were a law, everybody in the world would suffer accordingly. So you don't judge according to appearances. The five senses report an avalanche of sights and sounds and sundry concepts, good and bad. But you're not a victim of the five senses. You can reject what you see, what you hear. You can see peace where discord is, love where hatred is, joy where sadness is, light where darkness is, life where so-called death is. You can discipline your senses, and you can taste the sweet savor of God. Taste the truth like you taste an apple. Judge not according to appearances. You're here to separate the sheep from the goats, the false from the real. So the ragweed, some people say the ragweed gives them, asthma or hay fever or something like that. If that were true, that were a cosmic law, everybody in the world, when that got in touch with ragweed, they would get coryza, and tearing, lacrimal ducts would begin to tear, and inflammation of the mucosa, and all these symptoms, or paroxysmal attacks. The same thing, like a person tells them sensitive to red roses or allergic to red roses. If you hypnotize that person and put a glass of distilled water under his nose and said, this is a red rose, well, now it's distilled water. He'd get all the symptoms right there in front of you. Now tell me, honestly, where is the allergy? Isn't it in his mind as a belief? Surely it isn't in the distilled water. He's probably allergic to his wife, or to his boss, or someone on the next bench or something. Don't you know that the ragweed and the pollen and all these things are the same substance as your own bloodstream? There's only one substance. God is the only presence, power, cause, and substance. Everything is spirit made manifest. So the ragweed, or what you want to call it, or the pollen, or the dust, all these are of God. Everything is spirit made manifest, for there isn't spirit and matter. Matter is the lowest degree of spirit, and spirit is the highest degree of matter. They're interconvertible, interchangeable. They're the same thing. So I visited Dr. Viktor Frankl of Vienna some years ago, distinguished psychiatrist. He was in Auschwitz, in a prison camp, He wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He practiced what is called logotherapy. He's a medical doctor, distinguished psychiatrist. He and other doctors were imprisoned. Now, this is what he says. He was imprisoned with other doctors in Auschwitz, and he said, we were anxious to know what would happen, what would be the consequence. For example, they had to stand out in the open air. They took a shower. They had no clothes on. They weren't given a towel or anything at all. It was in the late autumn. The weather was very cold, and they stood stark naked and still wet from the showers. In the next few days, our curiosity evolved into surprise. We were surprised that we didn't catch cold. There were many similar surprises in store for the new arrivals. The medical men among us, he said, learned, first of all, that the textbook tell lies. They were angry because the textbook told lies. They didn't get a cold. They didn't get pneumonia. Somewhere it is said that man cannot exist without sleep for more than a certain stated number of hours. That's quite wrong. I had been convinced that there were certain things I just could not do, that I couldn't sleep without this, or I could not live without that or the other. We slept in beds which were constructed in tiers. On each tier, measuring about 6.5 to 8 feet, slept 9 men, directly on the boards. 2 blankets were shared by each 9 men. We could, of course, lie only on our sides, crowded and huddled against each other, which had some advantages because of the bitter cold. Though it was forbidden to take shoes up to the bunks, some people did use them secretly as pillows, in spite of the fact they were caked with mud. Now, I would like to mention, he says, a few similar surprises, how much we could endure. We were unable to clean our teeth, yet in spite of that, and a severe vitamin deficiency, we had healthier gums than ever before. We had to wear the same shirts for half a year, until they had lost all appearance of being shirts. For days we were unable to wash, even partially, because of frozen water pipes. And yet the sores and abrasions on our hands, which were dirty from work in the soil, did not separate. That is, unless there was frostbite. If someone had asked of us the truth of the statement that flatly defines man as a being who can get used to anything, we would reply, yes, a man can get used to anything, but do not ask us how. But our psychological investigations have not taken us that far yet. Neither had we prisoners reached that point. So he said, don't ask us how, because the ways of the infinite are past finding out. Here they were, according to the textbook, they were all doctors. They should all get pneumonia, but they didn't. Nobody died. They were in a higher state of mind, dwelling in a higher level of consciousness. So Dr. Fleet of London told me that during the war that she was on a starch diet. She couldn't get the things that she used to, was accustomed to, rather. Other people are on a starch diet. She said neurotics and psychotics. They performed marvelous things during the war. Under the pressure of war, they became calm. They ministered to people and all that. And she said we had no vitamins, and our diet was contrary to all science, all scientific findings, and we were healthier than ever before. So the same thing as this doctor found out, you see. So we are not victims of the weather, you know. A lot of people are deceived. Rawson brought out, for example, a great scientist in scientific prayer. He spoke about a woman who had a clairvoyant vision, a student of his, and she saw this plane on fire in her dream. She and another woman went and prayed in that area, and lo and behold, they saw the plane come down. They contemplated the presence of love and peace and harmony and beauty and right action there, and their minds and hearts, they were immersed in the holy omnipresence. And the plane came down, but these men were not burned. It is on fire. They were in a blazing furnace. Because at higher levels of your mind you can't be burned. And they proved it. That's, of course, absolutely true. So surely fire burns, yes, but not at higher levels. When you tune in on the infinite, reach a high state of consciousness, you're immune. Neither does cancer have to kill you. If the person decides that he can ascend in consciousness, definitely believe he will be healed. In the Psychic Digest a few years ago, there appeared this story. Not many people know that Virginia Graham's success in her famous TV Girl Talk show came after she licked terminal cancer and made medical history. Her doctor explained the miracle Virginia experienced in these words. She purified her bloodstream with her thoughts. Actually, this came about as a result of Virginia's fervent prayers, when she knew she would be healed and would live. I have a surviving point of view, she claimed. I am not interested in sinking or floating. This love of life communicates itself and is probably one of the reasons for a TV show climbing to the top. So these great truths, of course, are there. The clairvoyant vision, they saw this airplane come out of the clouds in flames. It burned out about 100 feet from the ground, then cracked and fell. She looked about to see what the men were like. She couldn't distinguish anything about them. They were burned to a cinder in a dream. And then the two stood there praying in that area. The airplane came out of flame. It burned and cracked, just as she had seen. There were two men in it. They were absolutely untouched. It was like the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Bible. One of the men said, I was about to throw myself out of the plane when suddenly a sense of absolute peace and safety came, and I sat back in the machine. There he was in a furnace. That man turned out to be the son of the lady she had asked to come and help her. So there is, down through the ages, of course, Indians have walked in fire under controlled conditions, under the skeptical eyes of science itself. Clifton Pierce, a research scholar, in his writings, pointed out that in Surrey, England, in 1936, the English Society for Psychical Research ran a series of tests on 2 Indian fakers, imported expressly for the purpose. The tests were graded by doctors, chemists, physicists, and psychologists of Oxford. The Indians walked the fire under controlled conditions, under the skeptical eyes of science itself. No chemicals were used, no preparations made. They repeated the performance under a variety of conditions over a period of several weeks in the band. Surface temperatures were between 450 and 500 degrees centigrade. The interior temperature, 1400 degrees centigrade. There was no trickery or hallucination. These, of course, are very, very common. And what Quinby wanted to bring out years ago was that sickness was of the mind. And he said that people got their infection in the church. They got this guilt complex and fear, which made them sick, and he had to teach them a God of love, because they had a belief in a punitive God, that God was punishing them. So, for example, supposing a part of your body was severed, a limb or an arm put on a shelf, it couldn't catch cancer, tuberculosis, arthritis, or ringworm, or any disease. Why? It's separated from the mind. It undergoes dissolution. Dissolution is not a disease, it's a natural phenomenon. So here were these doctors, out in the evening, freezing temperature, and yet they didn't catch a cold. They were supposed to get pneumonia because their mind were elsewhere in their higher state of mind, So the wounds, they had open lesions, they failed to separate. Even they were dirty. And these things have happened, So the Indian faker sleeps in a bed of nails because he's been hypnotized and told whenever he pronounces a certain word he can throw himself on a bed of nails and they will not penetrate the skin. I've seen that. You have too, probably. That's a conditioning process. Lao Tzu, 600 BC, said that when the sage goes forth into the jungle, he carries no sword and no spear. He's not afraid of a javelin or the tooth of a rhinoceros, because there is in him no place where these can enter. In other words, he's built up an immunity. He's got intoxicated, received the divine antibody. So the externals are not causative, but man can make them a cause. And that's the great lie, that external things are causative. They're not. Our eyes deceive us frequently. We see the sun, the moon, and the stars, as well as each other, by means of our eyes, which function in a manner similar to a camera, but don't judge according to appearances. Your five senses bring you an avalanche of sights and sounds and sundry concepts, most of which are negative. All right, are you governed by your five senses during the day? Predictions of doom and gloom? Do you know when they show the mentioned two vice presidents, I think it was, wives had cancer or something? Some doctors told me that hundreds of women flocked the office. Fear. That's why Quinby said, that they fear is behind this disease. And they create the disease. He said, you tell a man who never heard of the word cancer, and tell him that he's got cancer. It has no effect whatever upon him. But as Quinby pointed out, you tell a man who's heard all the ravages of cancer, say, look, that little lump, maybe he fell down, maybe it's a harmless lump, maybe he hurt himself. And you tell him, that's cancer, malignant, it's evil. He said he'll go home, and he'll make it. Fear in his mind. That which I greatly feared has come upon me. Now, so don't judge according to appearances. Physiologists tell us that when, for example, we look at a tree, its inverted image is reflected on the retina of our eyes, which in turn transmit the picture to the brain centers. These reactions are called visual impressions. The physiologist says that we see with the brain. You know that you see with your mind. You see with your eyes closed. You can see with your mother if you close your eyes now. You can see colors better when your eyes are closed. Vision is spiritual, eternal, indestructible. You see in your dreams. The faculty of clairvoyance is in all of us, though more highly developed in some. You're frequently deceived by what you look at. For example, A stick inserted in water appears broken. It isn't. When you stand on a railroad track, the two parallel lines of the rail seem to come together. In the distance, white figures seem to be larger than black ones. Your eye deceives you. Yes. Your eye often misrepresents the true state of existence because it deals only with the surface appearance of fact. People say the sun rises and the sun sets. Actually, it neither rises nor sets. We see nothing as it is in reality because our eyes are geared to see according to our beliefs. If our eyes were geared in any other way, we would see things differently. An airplane seems to move in a straight line. In reality, it follows a geometrical arc. The razor blade with which you shave seems very sharp and straight. Yet when seen under a microscope, it is a wavy line. It's not solid at all. A piece of steel seems solid. Yet scientists point out that X-rays reveal it to be porous, just like your body. That in reality, it is made up of trillions of animated miniature universes, each having an extraordinarily rapid movement, yet no physical contact with each other. If you looked at a photograph of your mother with a magnifying glass, her face would look like a succession of gray, black, and white points, depending on whether the paper is black, gray, or white. The portrait of your mother disappears. It only existed because your eyes were geared to a three-dimensional level. You saw it in the scale of your accustomed observation, looking at the razor blade with the eyes of science. We see electrons in perpetual motion which travel at the rate of several thousand miles per second. So if you say that you believe in the star, that they're jinx, that they're malignant or malefic configuration of the stars in the sky, God pronounced everything he made and said it's good. It isn't the stars, it's your belief, as Quimby brought out. It's not the external thing. You're making an external thing a cause. And nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. You made that law for yourself. Your sister born at the same second as you were, and you're identical twins. She is taking up the study of the science of mind or something, and she's leading a marvelous and wonderful life, while you're suffering from your belief in the malefic configurations of the planets. And things are going upside down for you, and everything is going wrong because of your belief. Because whether you're consciously thinking of it or not, whatever you believe in your subconscious, it brings it to pass, you know, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not. So it's a very dangerous thing to think that the planets are against you, are working against you. You made a belief. You're making an external thing a cause. The whole world believes a lie, he said. When I tell them the truth, he said, they think I'm telling them a lie. They think God up there is punishing them. The life principle can't punish you. It forgives you. If you burn yourself, it forgives you, gives you new skin and tissue. If you cut yourself, it forms thrombin, gives you new skin also. It always seeks to heal. The infinite cannot punish you. Its eyes are too pure to behold iniquity. God is the eternal now. Now is the day of salvation. You're not a victim of karma. You're not a victim of the past because you're dealing with a timeless, spaceless being. Therefore, there's no past to worry about. The past is dead. Nothing matters but this moment. Change this moment, and you change your destiny. A new beginning is a new end. And the new beginning is when you enthrone godlike ideas in your mind and live with them. The future is your present thinking grown up. And then the desert of your life will rejoice and blossom as the rose. That's the good news, the gospel, the truth of being. You're not a victim of the past. You change your mind now. And the murderer can be changed in the twinkling of an eye. Of course he can. We punish ourselves by our misuse of law. Your five senses bring reports to you from the outside world, which are not always true, but are oftentimes harmful and destructive. Thoughts which you emotionalize, accept as true, enter into your subconscious and produce effects on your body and affairs according to their nature. Here's a young man who believed a lie. He was gradually going blind, and his doctor told him to leave the tailoring business, which was his vocation. because it caused a strain on his eyes and to take a less arduous job. The ophthalmologist couldn't find anything radically wrong with the fundus, the part opposite the pupils of his eyes. Thought the difficulty might be emotional. This young man was blaming his work and the resultant strain on his eyes, caused by sewing all day. The real cause of his eye trouble, however, was that he wanted to exclude his wife from his world. He went to a psychic, and she made a chart for him. She said, the planets are against you. Mars a square your sun, so forth. It frightened the life out of him. He thought the stars were against him now. The whole trouble was, it's not the stars, it's we ourselves, that we are underlings. The real cause of his eye trouble was that he wanted to exclude his wife from his world. He said she was a nagger. He hated to go home. The trouble was within himself. Among his frequent expressions to me were, I hate the sight of her. I can't stand to look at her. I can't see my way out, because I have 2 children and they need her. She won't give me a divorce, and I want the children. His subconscious mind accepted as request these feelings and statements, and proceeded to respond by occluding his vision so that eventually he wouldn't be able to see. It had nothing to do with the planets, nothing to do with the tailoring business, nothing to do with the atmosphere. You don't give power to external things. You give power to the Almighty that's within you. Omnipotent, supreme. There's nothing to oppose it, challenge it, thwart it, vitiate it. You don't make a created thing a cause. That's why the whole world believes a lie. I got this man and his wife together and explained the workings of the mind. She cooperated by ceasing to nag. They began to pray together, seeing God in each other. They also began to speak to one another kindly and lovingly. Moreover, they prayed every night and morning, alternating several selected psalms, 23rd, 27th, 46th, 91st, and 100th psalms, magnificent psalms. The psalms are songs of God. With meditations from Quiet Moments with God, a book of mine containing 60 special prayers. In a month's time, his vision was back to normal. The ophthalmologist congratulated him. His vision was normal. This man was certainly lying to himself by blaming his environment and his job, when all the time the true cause was in his destructive, negative emotions. Disease means a lack of peace, a lack of ease. Disease is of the mind. Many people think disease is out there, that the body catches disease. That's why the world believes a lie. All disease is of the mind. Nothing happens in the body, except it first happens in the mind. I had a chat with a man some years ago who had been taking sedation, rest cures, and observing a special diet for colitis, from which he had suffered for several years. He was lying to himself, blamed heredity, and died as the cause. He said, colitis runs in my family. My grandmother and my mother had it also, and I'm sure the food I eat has something to do with my trouble. What we need is spiritual food. You can eat the choicest food in the world, you know, and get up hungry from the table, hungry for love or peace or harmony. Don't you know that people eat the choicest food in the world? They have all the vitamins and the minerals, and still they die because of negative, destructive emotions. The negative emotion will turn that food into poison that you eat. We need the bread of heaven, the bread of peace and of harmony and of love. Lord, evermore, give us this bread. Well, this man who was blaming heredity and diet and all that for his colitis, I pointed out to him that the late Dr. Flanders Dunbar, great authority on psychosomatic medicine, She was a medical doctor, psychiatrist, also took degrees in religion, because she discovered that a number of people were sick because of false religious beliefs. So I pointed out to him that she was a distinguished authority on it, and said that a number of cases of colitis in New York hospitals showed that the men were tied to their mothers, had never been away from their mothers for more than 30 days in their whole lives. None of these men was married, and the onset of their colitis was associated with the conflict between the mother tie and desire for marriage. The man had a similar conflict, plus a deep-seated resentment of his mother, who seemed to criticize and find fault with every girl he brought to their house as a prospective bride. It had nothing to do with heredity, had nothing to do with diet. I found that he was deeply in love with a spiritual-minded young woman, but hesitated to marry her, lest he offend and disturb his mother. His eventual solution was simple. He came to a decision to marry. He brought a home for his bride. He broke the umbilical cord once and for all. He radiated love and goodwill to his mother and wished for her all the blessings of heaven. But he informed her that his wife now came first in his life. His ulcerated colitis cleared up miraculously in a few weeks. He had been deceiving himself for several years, failing to see that the cause of his sickness was purely emotional, was due to the poison pocket of resentment and the crevices of a soul. This man did not deliberately give himself colitis. His trouble came from the accumulation of his negative and destructive thinking. Because the subconscious mind is the law, it arranges all the deposited thoughts into a complex pattern. And these constantly fed subconscious patterns are not only the cause of all ills, but also the cause of our successes and triumphant achievements. The great lie is the average man is constantly attributing causation outside himself. He blames conditions, environment, and circumstances. Sometimes he blames God, but all his difficulties are caused by mental patterns and beliefs lodged in his subconscious mind. The great lie, in essence, is the belief in material causation. You will constantly hear people claim that material circumstances are the source of their difficulties, trials, and tribulations. It isn't the thing believed in. If you believe, in a shrine, it isn't the shrine, it's your belief. Nothing to do with the shrine. If you think you bathe in a certain water and you're going to be healed, it's nothing to do with the water. Analyze the water as the same water in your own home. It's the belief, not the thing believed in. So, according to your belief is live in the state of being it, to be alive to something, to accept something as true. So, the object of your faith be true or false, you'll get results. So, some people say, well, if I touch that bone of that saint, I'll get a healing, all right? So, somebody steals that bone, and they put a dog's bone there, and that person comes and thinks it's still a saint's bone. He'll get results, not because of the bone, it's a dog's bone. No, not because of the bone, but because of his belief. You can call it blind belief if you want to. So it's the belief, and his subconscious responds. That's a simple law of life. Why people don't understand that today is beyond my imagination. So you'll constantly hear people say that circumstances, conditions, and all that are the source of their problems and other people. This is the lie of major importance. It must be utterly and completely refuted. While talking with a woman some years ago, I learned her mother had a serious illness, and that, as she said, was a splendid Christian. Most people don't know what that word means anyhow. That she was kind-hearted, religious, and most generous. And why didn't God do something for her? Such a question illustrates perfectly the great lie that affects many people. The law of life is the law of belief. We demonstrate what we believe. You can believe a lie too, Whatever we sow in our subconscious mind, we shall reap. If we sow thoughts of sickness, fear, resentment, and enmity, we shall reap these things. To sow a thought, biblically speaking, means to accept it wholeheartedly. It is our deep-seated beliefs that we demonstrate. What you really believe in your heart, in other words. This girl and her mother were completely deceived in that both of them believed that sickness is independent of the mind, has nothing to do with the thinking process. That's the great lie that Quenby was talking about. The great lie which the whole world believes in, that sickness is out there somewhere, something I catch. That's too stupid for words. Her mother had a bad heart condition and believed that she could not be cured. That was her real belief. And so naturally she couldn't get a healing. There are no incurable diseases. There are only incurable people. There are those who believe they cannot be healed, and according to their belief is it done unto them. Her mother made excellent progress as she learned the law of life. As she ceased to be under the spell of the great lie, that our heart is a material object with laws of its own, independent of her thinking. She now believes that her body is subject to her thoughts and feelings. As she changes her mind, so she will change her body. And she is no longer that way. She knows how to pray, prays regularly and systematically, knowing that an infinite healing presence is flowing through her, as the beauty of wholeness, vitality, and strength, that God's love dwells in her mind and body. She realized that sickness has no power beyond what she gives it in her own thought, and she found herself healed. When trouble of any kind comes, look upon it as a nature signal that you're thinking wrongly in that direction. Then change your thought and keep it changed. I've heard this expression, "What have I done to deserve this?" was asked recently by a young man, adding, "I have never done anything wrong." The explanation is the cure, as Quenby said in 1847. So I proceeded to point out to this young man that all our experiences are the results of our subconscious beliefs and assumptions. No matter what happens in your life, it is simply an outpouring of your subconscious mind. Out of the heart are the issues of life. The heart means your subconscious mind in Hebrew symbolism. All issues, all experiences, conditions, and events that you experience are a mathematical reproduction of the subconscious patterns, of subconscious beliefs and conditioning. In other words, all the experiences, conditions, and events of our lives are the result of the totality of our beliefs. Moreover, all of us have many beliefs and ideas which we have long since forgotten, perhaps going back to childhood, hidden in the deeper recesses of our subconscious mind. All our beliefs and tendencies with which we were born are still with us, and they have power to manifest in and influence our lives. For example, if you believe that sitting near a fan will give you a stiff neck, your subconscious mind will see to it that you get a stiff neck, not because of the fan, which represents innocuous molecules of energy oscillating at a higher frequency, but because of your erroneous beliefs. I've seen people in India working under a fan all day, and it has no effect whatever upon them. The fan is harmless. Surely you don't say the fan gives you a stiff neck. It's molecules moving in space. If you're afraid that you will catch a cold because someone sneezes, your fear is a movement of your own mind, which creates what you expect, fear, and believe. Others in the office don't get a cold. When the virus comes around, there are many men and women in your office, in your factory, they never get it. They don't believe in it. They believe in health. If you happen to be in a warm room and you go out in the cool atmosphere, nature may cause you to sneeze. That's nature's way of bringing about a balance and equilibrium in your body. The sneeze is a blessing. It's a benediction. Many, however, fear that they're now catching a cold, not knowing that it is the creative power of their own thought that causes the cold. This young man, who wondered what he had done to deserve such trouble, confessed to me that he had bought an astrology magazine that morning, and it said that there was great danger of an automobile accident, to be very careful. He said that he was charged with fear and shook all over when he read it. He didn't want to drive that day, but he had to go for an audition, which was very important, and the only way was by car. He had 3 accidents that same day, injuring one man seriously. He was suffering from shock himself, and also received some contusions and lacerations. His car was badly damaged. Job said, "What I greatly feared has come upon me." It had nothing to do with the stars. The Mercury and Venus and Harmony and Saturn, they're all molecules moving in space like your Earth. Nothing evil in this universe. God pronounced everything good and very good. Why should we have the effrontery, the audacity, the impertinence to pronounce certain things evil when God pronounced them good and very good? Nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. His great fear brought on these accidents, thoughts which are emotionalized and are dramatized into experience by the subconscious mind. His subconscious mind took his great fear as a request and manifested it on the screen of space. What we sow, we shall surely reap. There's only one power. That's the spirit within you. You call it consciousness, which is the way you think, feel, believe, what you give mental consent to. There's no other power or cause or substance in the universe. I gave this man a prayer to use regularly and elaborated on the point that if he filled his mind with these great truths, his subconscious mind would accept them accordingly, and he would be under a subconscious compulsion to drive harmoniously and peacefully, that nothing would ever happen to him again. This is the prayer I gave him, suggesting that he use it regularly and systematically until it became a part of him, just like an apple becomes your bloodstream. The same way you learn to walk, to swim, to dance, to play the piano, to type. You repeated a thought pattern, act again and again. After a while, it was second nature, an automatic response of your deeper mind to your conscious thinking and acting. That's prayer. When you type, you're praying. When you drive a car, you're praying. You're conforming to principles. The wheels have to be round. The gas won't drive your car. It has to change its consistency and become a vapor. Likewise, in order for your world to change, you have to change your mind. You can't go on thinking the same old way. In order to begin to think in a new way, you have to get some new ideas. You have to find out about the laws of mind. You have to get a read for your new thinking. And therefore you begin to think in whatsoever things are true, lovely, noble, and godlike. You realize that your thoughts are creative. Whatever you impress in the subconscious, good or bad, is expressed. Therefore you begin to have a healthy, reverent, wholesome respect for your thoughts. There's a reason for your thinking then. So this man began to affirm, this is God's car, his own car. It's God's idea, of course it is. Where did it come from? It moves from point to point freely, joyously, and lovingly. God's wisdom guides this car in all its ways. God's order, symmetry, beauty govern the mechanism of this car at all times. God's holy presence blesses this car and all its occupants. The driver of this car is an ambassador of God. He's full of love and goodwill to all. God's peace, truth, and understanding always govern the driver. God directs all decisions, making straight, beautiful, and perfect the way. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon the driver, making all roads a highway for his God. Wonderful prayer. There are many people who blame the weather for their colds, aches, and pain, also for their depression, melancholia. They say, he's blocking my good. Only for that fellow in the office I'd be promoted. You're making a god of another person. That's the big lie. There's only one God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God. Jealous in the sense you mustn't know another, because then your mind is double-minded. You're unstable. You're pressing up and down on the elevator. We don't know what you believe in. There's only one power. So you don't put another person on a pedestal and say, you're a new God I've got to worship. You're blocking my good. Now, how on earth can you make any sense out of that? There's only one being at the infinite presence and power within you. There's nothing to oppose that. It's omnipotent, the creed of the world. None shall stay its hand and say unto it, what doest thou? No one can oppose it. All-powerful, the ever-living one. And therefore you say to yourself, if you want promotion, Infinite Spirit opens up a new door for me where I express myself at my highest level, and where I exercise my faculties at the highest degree, and I have a marvelous and wonderful income, consistent with integrity and honesty. So promotion is mine. Then you realize the power of the Almighty is backing you up. You go to the source. Stop believing in that big lie. The whole world believes the lie. It's so true. So the air, as we said, is harmless. Stop polluting the atmosphere with strange notions, false doctrines, and weird beliefs. People talk about pollution, but you never hear them talk about the pollution of the mind, with resentment, hostility, and anger, and hate, and all this sort of thing. You must learn the great truth that no person, situation, or condition cause you to be ill, unhappy, lonesome, or to suffer from pecuniary embarrassment. So there's no use blaming somebody else. No one to blame at all. The beliefs and impressions made in your subconscious mind cause all your experiences and events of your life. Someone can call you a skunk. Well, are you going to get angry and upset? Can't you say, God's sister, you have no power to disturb me today. God's peace fills your soul. Or you can say to yourself, God loves me and cares for me, and go on about your business, can't you? Now, don't tell me that that person has power to disturb you. If so, you're suffering from the great lie, and it's the biggest lie of all time. The suggestions, statements of others have no power to disturb you. You know that very well, except you're a mental case. You can curse or bless. It's the movement of your own mind. And there's no law preventing you from saying, God loves me and cares for me. You neutralize that negative thought or that angry thought. You make constructive energy out of it, don't you? You must learn the great truth. No person, situation, or condition has any power to disturb you. Billions are suffering from the great lie because they're self-hypnotized by an accumulation of false ideas, beliefs, opinions, and sense evidence. Your subconscious mind acts as law to manifest and portray the accumulated patterns which are dwelling in your deeper mind. Nothing happens by chance. Everything is pushed from behind, as Emerson said. Psychiatrists and psychologists, medical doctors, delving and probing into your deeper mind, have demonstrated that you're not aware of these inner patterns. Not having placed them there knowingly, many persons assume that they do not have them. Then they establish alibis and excuses of all kinds to justify themselves. Quinby proved 100 years ago that the body moves as moved upon, the body acts as acted upon, that it has no volition, no self-conscious intelligence, no activity of itself. The body doesn't catch disease. That's insanity. The body is characterized by inertia. Your body are waves of light, molecules, moving at tremendous speed. You can play in your body a melody of God or a hymn of hate. The body doesn't care. It's characterized by inertia. It's an emotional disc upon which you play your emotions. If you sever, as I explained to you previously, sever a part of your body, you can suffer from disease, undergoes decomposition. I'd like to reiterate that because it's so true. Therefore, you know very well all disease takes place in the mind, and disease is like a ease, like a poise, like a peace. That's why you read in the Bible. All the time he said, go in peace, thy faith had made thee whole. Why in peace? Because their mind was in turmoil, in sixes and sevens. They were emotionally disturbed, overwrought, maybe jealous, envious, hateful, whatever it might be. But they had no peace of mind. If they had peace of mind, they couldn't be sick. Don't you know this? It's impossible to have a healthy mind in a sick body. Mens sana in corpore sana. A healthy mind, a healthy body. Very simple, isn't it? Very simple. The great lie operates from many angles. There are those who blame the devil for their problems, but there's no such being. Do you know what the Hebrews give that title for? A-Y-I-N, ayin. It means the eye. For the eye slays the fact. Your eye deceives you. Say the sun, the earth moves around the sun, or the earth, is flat or something of that nature. Your eye deceives you. So they call the devil the eye, ayin. And they also called it laughter, mirth, because there's no such being. They said the devil is God upside down. The morbid, twisted, distorted concept that people have of God of love. To the froward I am froward, to the pure I am pure. There's only one power. There can't be two or three or 1,000. Just one. That's the greatest of all truths, Devil, E-V-I-L, spelled backwards, L-I-V-E. All right. If you're living life backwards, that's your evil or your devil, isn't it? In Hebrew, Satan, in the book of Job, Seta, means to slip, to err, to deviate from the truth. All right. Surely that's your devil, isn't it? When you deviate from the truth, when you misuse the law, it's misunderstanding, misinterpretation of life. Wherever the universal presence and power diversifies itself, it limits itself. So we see through a glass darkly. So it's your a misunderstanding is the only devil there is, or you could call it ignorance, another word for it. Buddha called it ignorance. So it means living life backward, like spell live backward, and that's what you have. The ancient Hebrew mystics said that the devil is one who lies about God, the slanderer, One of those slanderers or tell lies about the truths of the infinite. Good and evil are simply the movements of your mind, relative to the living spirit within you, which is God, of course. The forces of nature are not evil. It depends entirely on the use we make of the elements of nature, and the forces within us, whether we have a constructive or a negative reaction. The great lie is to enthrone the idea in your mind that things, conditions, and phenomena are the determining causes of your misery, suffering, and misfortune. It's the biggest lie of all time. There is no one to change but yourself, and you are your own savior. To think that some man is going to save you is the biggest lie in the world, because your Bible tells you point blank, I rejoice in God my Savior. And there's only one God. There can't be two gods or two powers. Impossible. Spiritually, mentally, or any other way. And I said, ye are gods, and all of your sons of the Most High. Everybody's a son of God. Yes, they were all expressions of the one being, the one progenitor. So stop giving power to people, conditions, and events. So a man, banker, said to me one time that members of his staff were out due to a virus infection, that he was afraid of catching it also. He wanted to know how to protect himself. I replied, telling him that he was afraid of an invisible virus which he couldn't see. It had no power over him. I pointed out that he was suggesting to himself that he might be liable to the infection, that the suggestions and statements of others had no power to create the things they suggest. They don't. The power is in you, the movement of your own thought. Choose ye this day whom will serve. Hold before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the law, a curse if you disobey. Suggestions of others are powerless. I told him to reject the suggestion of infection completely, that the creative action is always in his own thought and feeling. I also pointed out that nothing can happen to him except through the creative power of his own mind, that others, therefore, had no power. He affirmed frequently as follows: I and my Father are one. I live now and have my being in God. God lives, moves, and has being in me. God can't get sick, The Spirit was never hurt or wounded. What is true of God is true of me. God can't be sick, therefore I can't be sick. I am all health. God is my health. Health is mine. Joy is mine. Peace is mine. I feel wonderful. You can rest assured he had no flu. You're in charge of your own mind, and you have the wonderful opportunity to affirm that God's peace and love fills your heart and your mind and your whole being. The power is always in you, not in the other. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. I am the Lord, that is my name. My glory you shall not give to another, neither shall you give my praise. And I am the Lord, and there is none else. And from the rising of the sun to the setting of the same, there is none else. And when you say I am, you're renouncing the presence and power of God within yourself. Pure being, life awareness. That's the only presence, power, cause, and substance. The big lie is to give power to any person, place, or thing, germ or circumstance or condition. Then you're no longer loving the one, the beautiful, and the good. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Cease giving power and prerogatives to people, conditions, and events which have no power. Cease looking upon matter as evil or the world as evil. Spirit and matter are one. Matter is the lowest degree of spirit, and spirit is the highest degree of matter. Matter and invisible energy are one. Scientists inform us that energy and matter are interchangeable. Energy and matter are one. This is why thoughts are things. Thought is cause. The manifestation is the effect. Let us have a wonderful prayer. And prayer changes things. It changes the person who prays. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? This one verse of the 27th Psalm gives you personal freedom from all fear. It reveals to you the source of all power, strength, and wisdom. It enables you to reject the power of externals, takes the burden off your shoulders, sets you on the high road to peace of mind, health, and happiness. The Lord is the presence of God, the I am within you, given to you in the 3rd of Exodus. The Lord is your own consciousness, your own awareness, your own life principle. Your state of consciousness, the way you think, feel, believe, and the reasoning behind your belief. God in the midst of you is guiding you now. His peace fills your soul. God's love saturates your whole being. I am the Lord that healeth thee. I am the Lord thy God. I will come and heal thee. God be with you.